Kola is a young, vibrant, and ambitious young man who was tired of seeing his family live in abject poverty. He was determined to bring his family out of poverty. He meets a very successful businessman who promises him life-changing opportunities in the city of Lagos, and he follows him to Lagos. But on getting to Lagos, he must pay some dear prices. Is Kola willing to pay those prices? Will he survive the city of Lagos? Let us find out as we go in this story. Please, our dear viewers, kindly subscribe to our channel and give our video a thumbs up so that we can keep bringing you interesting stories in this channel. In a small village called Omole, where the people worked hard under the hot sun, lived a young man named Kola. He was a dreamer. Every morning, Kola would wake up, look at the sky, and imagine a better life for himself and his family. His mother, Iya Kola, worked as a street vendor selling fruits, and his younger sister, Titi, still went to school. They struggled to make ends meet. Their father had died many years ago, leaving them in deep poverty. Kola wanted to help them escape this life, but it seemed impossible. One day, while walking through the market, Kola overheard two men talking about a businessman from the city, Mr. Ade, who was coming to their village. This man was known to help young people get jobs in the big city Lagos, and Kola's heart started beating fast. Could this be the chance he was waiting for? When Mr. Ade arrived, he was nothing like Kola imagined. He was tall, dressed in a sharp suit, and his voice carried authority. Kola listened carefully as Mr. Ade gave his speech, promising opportunities to anyone willing to work hard. But there was something in the man's eyes that made Kola uncomfortable, something that seemed too good to be true. Later that night, Kola lay awake thinking about Mr. Ade's offer. Should he take the risk and go to the city? His family needed the money, and if he could make enough, he could finally give them the life they deserved. But something inside him warned him that this might not be the perfect opportunity it seemed. The next day, Kola made up his mind. He approached Mr. Ade, who smiled as if he had been expecting Kola all along. "You are a smart young man," Mr. Ade said, his eyes gleaming. "I see potential in you. You can go far." Kola's heart raced with excitement. But Mr. Ade's next words sent a chill down his spine. "There is one condition," he said quietly, leaning closer. "To work for me, you must never speak of what you see or hear. You will be paid well, but you must keep your silence." Kola hesitated. What was Mr. Ade hiding? But the thought of his mother and sister pushed him forward. "I will do it," Kola said, his voice steady. Mr. Ade smiled again. "If that is the case, we will leave for Lagos tomorrow morning." The night before Kola left for the city, he sat with his mother and sister in their small hut. His mother was worried. "Kola, are you sure about this?" she asked, her eyes full of concern. "The city is a dangerous place. I don't want you to get into trouble." "I'll be fine, Mama," Kola reassured her. "This is our chance. I'm doing this for all of us." The next morning, Kola packed his small bag, ready to leave his village behind. His mother and sister watched him with heavy hearts, not knowing when they would see him again. As Kola boarded the bus to Lagos with a few other young men from the village, he felt a mixture of excitement and fear. The city held promise, but it also held danger. The journey was long, and as the bus rode along the bumpy roads, Kola couldn't help but wonder what awaited him in Lagos. As the sun began to set, the bus finally arrived in Lagos. Kola stared out of the window wide-eyed at the tall buildings, the crowds of people, and the constant noise. This was nothing like Omole, his village. Everything here was bigger, louder, and faster. Mr. Ade led the group to a large house on the outskirts of the city. The house was surrounded by high walls, and there were armed guards at the gate. Kola's heart raced as they entered. This didn't feel like the opportunity he had imagined. Inside, the house was lavishly decorated with expensive furniture and large paintings on the wall. But despite the luxury, Kola couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Mr. Ade led them to a room where several men were waiting. "These men will be your employers," Mr. Ade said, gesturing towards them. "You will work for them, and in return, you'll be paid handsomely." One of the men stepped forward, his face tense. You will start work tomorrow. The work isn't easy, but if you follow instructions, you'll be fine. And remember, silence is the most important thing. Speak about what you see here, and there will be consequences. Kola's heart sank. This was not what he had expected. He had thought he would be given a regular job, something he could work hard at and make an honest living. But now, it felt like he was stepping into something much darker. That night, Kola couldn't sleep. The other boys in the room were quiet, lost in their own thoughts. Kola wondered if they were as scared as he was. He thought about his mother and sister back home and how much they depended on him. He had to make this work, no matter how difficult it was. The next morning, Kola and the other boys were taken to a warehouse in a remote part of the city. Inside, there were boxes stacked high, and the air was thick with dust. Your job is simple, one of the men said. Move the boxes, load them onto the trucks, and don't ask questions. Kola and the others walked in silence, their muscles aching as they lifted the heavy boxes. Every time Kola tried to catch a glimpse of what was inside the boxes, one of the guides would shout at him to keep moving. As the days turned into weeks, Kola became more and more suspicious. Why were they being so secretive? What were they hiding? One evening, after a long day of work, Kola decided to stay behind in the warehouse. When everyone else had left, he carefully opened one of the boxes. What he saw inside made his blood run cold. The box was filled with illegal and illegitimate drugs. Kola's heart pounded in his chest. He had unknowingly become part of a dangerous criminal operation. Panic surged through him, but he quickly closed the box and tried to calm himself. He had to get out of this. But how? The next day, Kola's mind raced as he walked. He couldn't just leave. Mr. Ade and the others would never let him go. He needed a plan, and he needed to act fast. That evening, Kola found one of the other boys, Tunde, sitting alone. Tunde had also come from a small village, and like Kola, he was here to escape poverty. Tunde, Kola whispered, sitting beside him, I need to talk to you. Tunde looked at him confused. What is it? Kola took a deep breath. I found out what we are really doing here. They are using us to move drugs. We are in serious trouble. Tunde's eyes widened in fear. What do we do? If they find out we know, they will kill us. We have to leave, Kola said firmly. We can't stay here, but we need a plan. For the next few days, Kola and Tunde worked quietly, pretending everything was normal while secretly plotting their escape. They knew it wouldn't be easy. The guards were always watching, and the house was heavily secured. One night, when the guards seemed distracted, Kola and Tunde made their first move. They slipped out of the house and ran through the dark streets, their hearts pounding with fear. But just as they thought they were free, they heard the sound of a car engine behind them. It was Mr. Ade. You really thought you could run? Mr. Ade said, stepping out of his car, his voice cold. You belong to me now, and no one leaves without paying the price. Kola and Tunde froze, their hearts racing. They were trapped. Kola and Tunde stood there, hearts pounding as Mr. Ade's cold stare bore onto them. They had been caught trying to escape, and now they had to face the consequences. Mr. Ade took a few steps closer, his presence suffocating under the dim streetlights. You thought you could just leave? He said, his voice low but dangerous. You think you can walk away from me, from everything you know now? Kola's legs felt weak, but he kept his head high. We didn't sign up for this, he said, his voice trembling. You lied to us. We thought we were getting honest jobs. Mr. Ade chuckled darkly. You are in Lagos now, boy. This is the real world, not your village. You want to escape poverty? You play by the city rules. He motioned to his guards, who stepped forward, grabbing Kola and Tunde by the arms. They struggled, but the guards were too strong. You are coming back with me, Mr. Ade said, his voice like ice. And this time, there will be no more running. Kola and Tunde were dragged back to the house, their dreams of escape shattered. Inside, Mr. Ade paced back and forth as they stood in front of him, bruised and beaten. You've made a grave mistake, he said, stopping to glare at them. But I'm feeling generous tonight. You will get one more chance to prove your loyalty. Fail, and you won't live to see another day. Fear twisted in Kola's gut. He had underestimated just how dangerous Mr. Ade was. But as much as he wanted to run, he couldn't leave Tunde behind. and he couldn't abandon his family back home. He needed a new plan, but for now, they had to survive. The next few days were filled with tension. Mr. Ade kept a close eye on Kola and Tunde, giving them even more grueling tasks. They worked in silence, trying not to attract attention, but Kola's mind never stopped racing. He knew they couldn't keep living like this. The longer they stayed, the more dangerous it would become. One evening, as they returned from another long day at the warehouse, Kola noticed something strange. One of the guards was acting differently. He was a younger man, and there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Kola decided to take a risk. Later that night, when the guards were switching shifts, Kola approached the younger guard, his heart pounding. "I know what's going on here," Kola whispered, keeping his voice low. "You don't belong in this life either, do you?" The guard glanced around nervously before responding. "Keep your voice down," he hissed. "If anyone hears you—" "They won't," Kola interrupted. "I just want to know if you will help us. We need to get out of here, and you're our only chance." The guard hesitated, his eyes darting around. "I can't," he said finally. "I have a family. If they find out, I am as good as dead." Kola sighed, feeling a heavy weight settle in his chest. It seemed like no one was willing to help them, but just as he was about to walk away, the guard grabbed his arm. "There is one way," he whispered, looking around cautiously. "But it's risky." Kola's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" he asked. "There is an inspector," the guard said, his voice barely audible. "He's been investigating Mr. Ade for a while, but he hasn't been able to get enough evidence. If you can get him proof of what is going on in here, he might be able to help you." Kola felt a glimmer of hope. This could be their chance, but it was a dangerous one. If Mr. Ade found out, they were as good as dead. "How do I find this inspector?" Kola asked. The guard scribbled an address on a scrap of paper and handed it to Kola. "Go there tomorrow night," he said. "But be careful. If anyone sees you, it's over." Kola nodded, his mind racing with a mix of hope and fear. This was it, their only chance. But it had to be done perfectly. The next day, Kola kept his head down as he walked, trying to act as normal as possible. Tunde noticed the change in his mood and pulled him aside during a break. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. Kola hesitated for a moment before explaining the plan to Tunde. "We have to be smart about this," he said. "We can't rush it or we'll end up like the others." Tunde's face paled at the thought, but he nodded in agreement. They spent the rest of the day quietly preparing, knowing that tonight could either be their escape or their downfall. When night fell, Kola and Tunde waited until everyone was asleep before slipping out of the house. The streets were eerily quiet, and every shadow seemed to move as they made their way to the address the guard had given them. The guard also helped them sneak out of the warehouse. After what felt like hours, they arrived at a small run-down apartment building, Kola's heart pounding as he knocked on the door. A few moments later, a tired-looking man opened it, his eyes narrowing suspiciously. "Who are you?" the man demanded. Kola swallowed hard. "The guard told me to come here," he said, holding up the scrap of paper. "We need your help." The man's expression softened slightly, and he motioned for them to come inside. "I am Inspector Bayo," he said, closing the door behind them. "You are from Mr. Ade's operation, aren't you?" Kola nodded, his palms sweaty. "We need to get out," he said, his voice shaking. "But we need your help. We know what's going on, but we can't escape on our own." Inspector Bayo leaned back in his chair, studying them. "You are brave to come here," he said slowly, "but you are also in more danger than you realize. Mr. Ade has powerful connections. If we are going to bring him down, we need solid evidence, and that means you have to go back and get it." Kola's stomach churned at the thought. Going back meant putting their lives at even greater risk, but they didn't have a choice. This was the only way to free themselves from Mr. Ade's grip. "I'll do it," Kola said, his voice steady. "But you have to promise me that you will protect my mother and my sister in case anything happens." Inspector Bayo nodded. "I will make sure they are safe. But remember, you are walking into a lion's den. Be very careful." Kola and Tunde returned to the house, their hearts heavy with the weight of what they had to do. The next few days were spent gathering as much information as they could without raising any suspicion. They watched the guards, noted the deliveries, and carefully documented everything they saw. Finally, the night came when they were ready to make their move. Kola slipped the evidence into his pocket and gave Tunde a nod. This was it. But just as they were about to leave, the door burst open and Mr. Ade stepped inside, his eyes blazing with fury. Mr. Ade's sudden entrance froze Kola and Tunde in their tracks. His eyes glowed with anger and the tension in the room felt like a thick blanket smothering them. Kola's heart pounded in his chest and his hands began to tremble. How had he found out? Had someone tipped him off? Mr. Ade stepped closer, his sharp, measured steps echoing in the small room. "Did you really think you could betray me?" he growled, his voice low but full of venom. "You disappoint me, Kola." Kola swallowed hard, struggling to keep his face calm. His mind raced for an excuse, a way to explain everything away, but there was no use. He had been caught and Mr. Ade was not the kind of man to forgive easily. I didn't," Kola stammered, but before he could finish, Mr. Ade cut him off with a harsh laugh. "Spare me your lies," he snapped, his eyes narrowing. "I know everything. You've been sneaking around, collecting evidence, planning to run to the police like a coward." He leaned in, his face inches from Kola's face. "Do you know what happens to people who betray me?" Kola's throat went dry and he felt Tunde tense beside him. This was the moment they had feared, but something inside Kola refused to back down. He couldn't give up now, not after everything he had endured. He had to get out of this place, even if it meant risking everything. "You don't scare me," Kola said, his voice shaking but defiant. "I am not going to be your puppet anymore." Mr. Ade's eyes widened in surprise. Then a slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. "You have courage, I'll give you that," he said, "but courage won't save you." He motioned to the guards, and in an instant, they grabbed Kola and Tunde, pinning them to the ground. Kola struggled, but it was no use. The guards were too strong, and they forced him to his knees. They gave them the beatings of their lives. "Take them to the dark room," Mr. Ade ordered, his voice cold. "Let's see if a little time in the dark room will make them reconsider their choices." The guards dragged Kola and Tunde out of the house into a waiting car. As they sped through the dark streets of Lagos, Kola's mind raced. The dark room? He had heard other workers talk about it. A place where Mr. Ade took people who crossed him. None of them ever came back. The car pulled up outside a large abandoned building and Kola and Tunde were shoved inside. The air was damp and musty and the only light came from a single flickering bulb at the corner. The guards threw them into a small room and locked the door behind them. For hours they sat in the darkness, their bodies aching and their minds filled with dread. Kola couldn't stop thinking about his mother and his sister Titi. What would happen to them if he didn't make it out of here? He had to survive for their sake. After what felt like eternity, the door cracked open and a figure stepped inside. It wasn't Mr. Ade, but one of the younger guards. The same one who had given Kola the address to the inspector's house. "I don't have much time," the guard whispered, kneeling beside them. "I'm going to get you out of here, but you need to trust me." Kola's heart leaped with hope, but he hesitated. Could he really trust this man? What if it was a trap? The guard seemed to sense his doubt. "Look," he said, pulling out a small key. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because I hate what Mr. Ade has turned me into. I can't keep living like this. If you want to survive, now is your chance." Kola glanced at Tunde, who gave a small nod. They didn't have any other options. "All right," Kola said, his voice steady. "We are with you." The guard quickly unlocked the cuffs and led them through a maze of dark hallways. Every creak and whisper in the building sent shivers down their spines. They had to move fast, but one wrong step could alert the other guards. Finally, they reached a back door. The guard pressed his ear against it, listening for any movement outside. "It's clear," he whispered. "Go now and don't look back." Kola and Tunde slipped out into the night, their hearts racing. The cool air hit their faces as they dashed through the narrow alleys, the sound of the city fading behind them. But they knew they weren't safe yet. Mr. Ade's reach was long, and if they didn't disappear quickly, he would come for them. They ran for what felt like hours until their legs could barely carry them anymore. Finally, they collapsed in a small alleyway, gasping for breath. "We did it," Tunde whispered. his voice filled with disbelief. We are free. But Kola knew better. They weren't free yet. As long as Mr. Ade was still out there, he would always come looking for them as long as they remained in Lagos, except they left Lagos entirely. We need to go back to the inspector, Kola said, pulling out the evidence he had gathered. This is the only way we can stop Mr. Ade from coming for us. Tunde nodded, though fear still lingered in his eyes. Let's hope we are not too late. With renewed determination, they made their way back to Inspector Bayo's apartment. When they arrived, the inspector was waiting for them, his face grim but resolute. You are brave to come back, Inspector Bayo said as they handed him the evidence. But this is just the beginning. Mr. Ade is powerful, and bringing him down won't be easy. You will need to stay hidden until I can gather more support. Kola and Tunde exchanged a glance, their hearts heavy with the weight of what lay ahead, but they knew they couldn't stop now. They had come too far to turn back. Whatever it takes, Kola said, his voice strong. We'll do whatever it takes to bring him down. Inspector Bayo nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. Good, because you are going to need all the courage you can get. As the days passed, Kola and Tunde remained in hiding. Inspector Bayo had arranged a safe house for them in a quiet part of Lagos, far from Mr. Ade's watchful eyes. The small run-down apartment was nothing like the bustling streets they were used to, but it was their sanctuary for now. Tunde paced the room, his nerves on edge. How long do we have to stay here? He muttered. I feel like we are sitting ducks. Kola shared his friend's frustration, but he knew they had no choice. Inspector Bayo said he needs time to gather evidence, to build a case strong enough to take down Mr. Ade. Kola reminded him, we can't rush this. Tunde sighed, collapsing onto the worn couch. I just don't want to be here forever. What if Mr. Ade finds us before Bayo can do anything? Kola didn't have an answer for that. The thought of Mr. Ade tracking them down haunted his every moment, but he had to believe that Inspector Bayo knew what he was doing. He had to believe that justice would prevail. Days turned into weeks, and still there was no word from the inspector. The tension in the apartment grew heavier with each passing day, and Kola found it harder and harder to keep his mind at ease. He couldn't stop thinking about his mother and his sister Titi, wondering if they were safe. One evening, as they sat in silence, there was a knock at the door. Kola and Tunde exchanged nervous glances. They hadn't had any visitors since arriving at the safe house. Who could it be? Tunde grabbed a small kitchen knife for protection. While Kola cautiously approached the door, he peeked through the peephole, his heart pounding in his chest. To his relief, it was Inspector Bayo. Kola quickly unlocked the door, letting the inspector in. His face was grim, and Kola immediately knew something was wrong. We have a problem, Inspector Bayo said, his voice low. Mr. Ade is getting suspicious. He's been asking questions, and I think he's starting to close in on your location. Kola's stomach dropped. What do we do? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We need to move you, Bayo replied, glancing around the apartment. This place is no longer safe. I have another location, but we have to leave now. Tunde stood up, knife still in hand. How long can we keep running? He asked, frustration and fear evident in his voice. Until we have what we need to take him down. Bayo said firmly, I know this isn't easy, but we are close. Just trust me. Reluctantly, Kola and Tunde gathered their few belongings and followed Inspector Bayo out of the apartment. The streets were dark and quiet, but Kola couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound sent his heart racing. They piled into the inspector's car, and Bayo drove them through a maze of back streets and alleyways, taking every precaution to avoid being followed. After what felt like hours, they arrived at a small hidden compound on the outskirts of the city. It was surrounded by tall trees, and the only sign of life was a faint light coming from one of the windows. This will be your new safe house, Bayo said as he parked the car. It's isolated, so you should feel safe here for now. Kola stepped out of the car, glancing around the weird, quiet compound. It didn't feel safe. It felt like a prison. How long do we have to stay here? Kola asked, his voice tinged with impatience. Just a little longer, Bayo assured him. I've been working on gathering more evidence. We've got a few insiders who are willing to testify, but we need to make sure everything is airtight before we make a move. Kola nodded, though the uncertainty gnawed at him. They were so close, yet it felt like they were still miles away from freedom. The weeks dragged on, and Kola grew more restless with each passing day. He and Tunde spent their time pacing the small compound, discussing their next steps, but the isolation was wearing on them. The weight of the situation was taking a toll, and Kola often found himself wondering if they would ever be free from Mr. Ade's grasp. One night, as they sat around the small kitchen table, Tunde voiced the thoughts that had been creeping into Kola's mind. "What if we never get out of this?" Tunde asked quietly, his eyes filled with fear. "What if Mr. Ade wins?" Kola didn't have an answer. He had always been the optimistic one, the dreamer who believed things would get better, but even his hope was starting to fade. The silence between them was thick with doubt. Before Kola could respond, the faint sound of footsteps outside caught their attention. They froze, their hearts pounding in unison. Someone was out there. Tunde grabbed the knife they had kept nearby for protection, his hands shaking. Kola motioned for him to stay calm as they quietly approached the window. The footsteps grew louder and Kola's pulse quickened. Who could it be? The compound was supposed to be hidden, off the radar. Had Mr. Ade found them? Suddenly, the door burst open and the two men in black suits stormed into the room. Kola barely had time to react before one of them grabbed him, shoving him against the wall. Tunde swung the knife widely, but the second man easily disarmed him. Kola struggled to break free, but the man holding him was too strong. "Who are you?" Kola demanded, panic rising in his chest. The man didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out a phone and handed it to Kola. "Mr. Ade wants to speak to you." Kola's blood ran cold. His worst fears had come true. With trembling hands, Kola took the phone and pressed it to his ear. Mr. Ade's voice came through, calm and composed, yet filled with menace. "Kola," he said smoothly, "you've been very busy, haven't you?" Kola's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to speak. "What do you want?" "I want you to stop running," Mr. Ade replied. "You are the type of person I want. I like people who are relentless, who are courageous. This little game you are playing ends now. Come back and I will consider sparing your life. Keep hiding and you will know what will happen." Kola clenched his fists, anger and fear swelling inside him. "I'll never come back to you," he spat. Mr. Ade chuckled darkly. "Oh, Kola, you misunderstand. I wasn't giving you a choice." The line went dead, and the men in black tightened their grip on him and Tunde. Kola knew then that their time had run out. Mr. Tunde had found them, and there was no more hiding. The grip of the man in black tightened around Kola's arm as he and Tunde were dragged out of the small compound. Kola's mind raced, trying to figure out what Mr. Ade had planned for them. Was this the end? Would they ever see their families again? The weight of the situation pressed down on him. But deep inside, something else stirred, a determination to not give in. As they were bundled into the back of a black SUV, Kola exchanged a glance with Tunde. His friend's eyes were wide with fear, but there was a flicker of resolve. Neither of them wanted to go down without a fight. The car sped through the dark streets of Lagos, heading towards an unknown destination. Kola's heart pounded, but he focused on calming his breath, searching for an opportunity to escape. The men were silent, their faces impassive as they watched Kola and Tunde closely. Suddenly, there was a screech of tires behind them. The unmistakable sound of sirens pierced the air. Kola's head snapped up as he looked out of the window. A police van was gaining on them. His heart surged with hope. Could it be Inspector Musa, the same inspector who had been investigating Mr. Ade's shady dealings? The driver of the SUV panicked, slamming his foot on the accelerator, but the police van kept closing in. The men in the car cursed under their breath, exchanging nervous glances. "We have to lose them," the driver backed, veering sharply into an alleyway. But the police van was relentless, its sirens blaring louder as it closed the gap. Just as the SUV attempted to make another sharp turn, the van skidded to a stop, blocking their path. The SUV came to a screeching halt. Before the men could react, the doors of the police van flew open and Inspector Musa and several officers jumped out, guns drawn. "Hands up, you are surrounded." Inspector Musa's voice rang out, firm and commanding. Kola's heart pounded in his chest, both from fear and relief. The men in black hesitated for a second, clearly weighing their options, but it was too late. The police officers quickly advanced, pulling the car doors open and dragging the men out one by one. Kola and Tunde watched in stunned silence as their captors were handcuffed and thrown into the police van. Inspector Musa approached the SUV, his sharp eyes narrowing as he spotted Kola and Tunde in the back seat. He opened the door for them, his expression softening. "Are you boys okay?" Kola nodded, still trying to process what had just happened. "You saved us." The inspector gave a small smile. "We've been watching Mr. Ade for a while now. We had a tip-off that something big was happening tonight." He glanced back at the men in black, now being shoved into the police van. "These guys won't bother you anymore. Mr. Ade and his entire operation team have been captured, and they are finished." Tunde, still shaking, muttered, "Thank you, sir. We didn't know if we'd make it out." Inspector Musa nodded. "You boys were smart to get out when you did. But this city, it's full of traps. Be careful." The police van's doors slammed shut, and the officers prepared to drive away, taking the criminals with them. Kola and Tunde stood in the alley, the weight of everything that had happened settling in. They were free, but freedom came with its own challenges. In the days that followed, Kola and Tunde tried to make sense of their lives. They were back at square one. No money, no connections, just two young men trying to survive in a city that didn't care about their struggles. The thought of going back to the village crossed Kola's mind more than once, but every time he dismissed it. He couldn't go back to Omole as a failure. His mother and sister were still counting on him. He had to make something of himself in Lagos. One evening, as they sat on a bench by the roadside, Kola turned to Tunde. "We can't just keep surviving like this. We need a real plan, something that will get us out of this cycle of poverty." Tunde sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. "But what can we do, Kola? Every door we try to open, it's slammed in our faces." Kola thought for a moment, and then his eyes lit up with an idea. "Remember Mama Bisi, the woman who sells fruits at the market? She told us she's struggling to keep up with demand. What if we offer to help her? We can work with her, build something together." Tunde raised an eyebrow. "You think selling fruits will get us out of this?" Kola nodded. "It's a start. We don't need to be rich overnight. We just need to start somewhere. We can learn the trade, grow it, and who knows, it might lead to something bigger someday." Tunde hesitated, then slowly nodded. "All right, let's try it." The next day, they approached Mama Bisi, a kind but shrewd woman who had been selling fruits at the market for years. She welcomed their offer with open arms, grateful for the extra help. The work was tough. Long hours under the scorching sun, dealing with difficult customers and making small profits. But Kola and Tunde put their all into it. They learned how to negotiate with suppliers, how to handle the market's competition, and slowly they started to grow their little fruit business. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest, and it gave them a sense of purpose. One afternoon, as they were stacking baskets of oranges at the market, a well-dressed man approached them. He introduced himself as Mr. Olamide, a businessman who had noticed their dedication and work ethic. He offered them a proposition. He wanted to partner with them to expand their fruit business, supplying to restaurants, to supermarkets and hotels across Lagos. Kola and Tunde exchanged glances, excitement bubbling up inside them. This was the opportunity they had been waiting for. But Mr. Olamide was different from Mr. Ade. He was straightforward, honest about the challenges they would face, but he also believed in their potentials. After some careful negotiation, they agreed to the partnership. It wasn't easy. The next few months were filled with sleepless nights, working late into the evening, juggling deliveries, and dealing with setbacks. But every time they were knocked down, they got back up. Their food business grew, and with it their reputation. Soon they were supplying fresh produce to some of the top restaurants and supermarkets in Lagos. The money started coming in, enough for Kola to send money back to his family and ensure that Titi stayed in school. One day, as Kola stood in their small office, now filled with papers and orders from clients, he looked out the window at the bustling city below. It has taken years of hard work, determination, and the kindness of a few good people, but they had made it. They weren't rich, but they had built something they could be proud of. Tunde entered the room holding a newspaper with their story on the front page. "We did it, Kola," he said, grinning. Kola smiled, feeling the weight of all the struggles lift off his shoulders. "Yeah," he said, "we did it." But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. There were still challenges ahead. But for the first time in his life, Kola felt like he was truly in control of his own destiny. He had paid the price of hard work and perseverance, and now he was ready to see just how far it would take him. I hope you enjoyed our story. Please don't forget to like our video, subscribe to our channel so that we can keep bringing you more interesting stories. Thank you for staying through with us, and we will see you in our next story. Bye!